The old man's hands trembled as he reached into his coat pocket, the folded discharge papers crinkling like dead leaves. A young officer yanked them away without a glance, tossing them onto the desk like trash. Behind the counter, 2 more cops laughed under their breath, exchanging smug looks as if a ghost had just walked in with a complaint. Outside, the heat clung to the glass like sweat on skin. But inside the station, the air was colder than the stares he received. "Sir, I told you already, wait over there," barked the sergeant, not bothering to lift his head. The soldier's boots didn't move. He stood upright, back stiff from old wounds and older discipline, his breath caught between rage and disbelief. He wasn't there to ask for a favor. He was there to report a robbery, a home break-in while he was at the graveyard laying flowers on his wife's stone. And still, no one cared. A younger officer walked past, bumping his shoulder hard enough to jolt the metal still pinned to his jacket. "This isn't a museum," the kid muttered, loud enough to draw more laughter from the desk. No one corrected him. No one apologized. The old man said nothing, eyes fixed on the faded American flag above the filing cabinet, the only symbol in the room that hadn't turned its back on him yet. His fists clenched behind him, not out of anger but control. A lifetime ago, he would have barked back, commanded respect without saying a word. Now he was just another old man wasting time, taking up space. The cops barely registered him anymore. One sipped coffee and scrolled his phone. Another mimicked a limp as he walked past, mocking the slow drag of the veteran's step. A call came in, a robbery in progress 2 blocks away. Every officer sprang up except the one dealing with him. "Some will get to you when they can," the sergeant grunted, reaching for his radio. The soldiers stood there as they all left him behind, like a forgotten coat rack in the lobby. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "They took everything, my wife's necklace, the flag that was over her casket." The sergeant didn't even look up. "File a report. That's it." The door buzzed behind another incoming officer, this one in plain clothes, chewing gum with a slouch. He glanced at the soldier, then at the papers on the desk. "Old guy bothering again?" he asked. "Did he piss himself this time?" The others laughed. One snorted soda through his nose. The veteran closed his eyes. He remembered Fallujah, the smoke, the blood, the voice of a dying friend calling for his mother. He remembered being carried out by 2 brothers in arms while shrapnel pierced his back. He remembered silence, the kind that breaks men without sound. But today this silence was different. It was coated in shame. His throat tightened as one cop walked up and said, "You should be grateful we didn't arrest you for loitering." The veteran stared at him long and hard, and for the first time, the young officer flinched. Somewhere outside, a motorcycle revved. Then another, then several. The ground beneath the station began to hum. Tires screeched outside. Doors slammed. The front glass fogged as shadows blocked the sun. One by one, they entered gray-haired, broad-shouldered, with eyes like war and steps like memory. Combat boots on polished tile, no badges, no permission. Just purpose. The room fell silent as they formed a wall behind him. No one spoke. The sergeant rose, finally meeting eyes with the old man. For the first time all morning, he looked afraid. The door closed behind them with a hard final click, the kind that made even seasoned men pause. 12 boots stood planted on polished tile, each one belonging to a man with more scars than memories and more medals than reasons left to care. The old veteran didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He knew the weight of their silence, the unspoken oath that echoed louder than gunfire. Every wrinkle on his face deepened, not from age, but from the moment, from being seen, finally, by someone who remembered what he was. The sergeant stepped back, eyes flicking to the wall where his own badge hung crookedly beside the precinct's mission statement. "You can't just walk in here like this," he muttered, but his voice lacked teeth. One of the men broad, tan skin, wearing a faded Marine Corps tee under a leather vest stepped forward and said nothing, just stared. His dog tag swung gently, catching the dim overhead light like a pendulum counting down something unseen. The desk cop, the one who had called the veteran a loiterer, stood frozen with his hand halfway to his holster. No one moved to challenge him, but none of the veterans flinched either. The silence cracked like a pressure cooker about to blow. The old soldier slowly turned, eyes hard, tears long dried. "I came here for help," he said, voice steady but low. "I didn't expect a parade, but I didn't deserve that." The youngest officer, the one who mocked the limp, suddenly found the floor fascinating. He shuffled backward toward the hallway, but one of the men blocked him casually with a foot, not touching him, just placing presence where words weren't needed. Another man stepped around the old vet, gently picking up the crumpled papers from the desk with 2 fingers, smoothing them like sacred scripture. His hands bore the tattoos of lost dates and names, a folded flag inked in black and gray across his wrists. The captain of the station entered, alerted by the sudden shift in air pressure. He looked at the room, at the stillness, at the tension that could be sliced with a bayonet, and said, "What the hell is going on?" A tall veteran stepped forward, silver beard framing a jaw that looked like it had been broken twice. "Sir," he said, calm but cold, "you've disrespected one of ours, and we're not leaving until that's fixed." The captain straightened his back. This is a police station, not a reunion hall. But his words felt hollow in the presence of men who had held dying brothers in the dirt of other countries. The old soldier finally stepped toward the desk, voice firm. "I came here to report a robbery. They stole my memories. They stole the last piece of my wife." His voice cracked, but he pushed through. "And instead of help, I got laughed at." For a moment, it felt like no one breathed. The veteran with the tattooed wrist opened the folder he brought photos of the house break-in, snapped that same morning. A shattered frame with a wedding photo, the flag missing from its display case. The box of medals emptied and thrown to the floor. He laid them on the desk like evidence in a courtroom. "We found the prints. One belongs to a local repeat offender named Carl Dawson. Your precinct let him go 2 weeks ago." The captain blinked. "That's not possible." "Dawson's," but he stopped. One of the older veterans raised an eyebrow and said, "Gone. Yeah, free, because you're drowning in paperwork and don't see the man behind the badge anymore." The sergeant finally spoke, his voice thinner now. "Look, I didn't mean to offend anyone. It's just, we get a lot of people in here with stories, you know? Half of them are drunk or confused." The veteran stepped forward. "So you assumed this one was too?" He pointed to the soldier. "Did you ask for ID? Did you check the address? Did you even listen when he said what was stolen?" The sergeant shifted uncomfortably, eyes dropping to the desk. "No," he admitted. "I didn't." The room buzzed with quiet rage. The kind that builds when wounds are reopened, not healed. Then came the twist. From the back room, a teenager burst out tall, lanky, with cuffs around his wrists and fear in his eyes. "I didn't mean to take the flag," he shouted, as 2 officers dragged him forward. "I didn't know it was from a funeral." The room exploded into movement. The veteran stepped back, stunned. The old man's knees nearly buckled, but he remained standing, just barely. The captain spun toward the officers. "Where did you find him?" "Abandoned shed, near the river," one replied. "We were checking a noise complaint." The veteran's photo folder was still open on the desk. The kid glanced down at it and froze. "That's the house." "Yeah, I took it. I thought it was just an old guy's stuff. I swear I didn't know." He looked straight at the veteran. "I didn't know she died." The veteran's jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't burn with hate. They filled with something quieter, something colder. "You didn't know," he repeated softly. The room grew still again. One of the Marines clenched his fists. Another turned his head, blinking hard. The man with the tattoos whispered, "We buried her 3 months ago. Full honors. I was there. I carried the flag to the coffin myself." The teen looked like he might collapse. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice cracking. "I was just looking for stuff to sell." "I didn't mean." The old man raised a hand, silencing him without a word. Then he turned to the captain. "I don't want to press charges," he said quietly. "I want my wife's flag back. I want my medals. And I want every man in this building to remember what respect looks like." The captain nodded slowly. "You'll have everything returned, and I'll personally file a report on today's conduct." He looked at his team embarrassed, some ashamed. There will be accountability. But before the veteran could reply, another officer entered, eyes wide. "Chief," he said, barely able to speak, "you're going to want to see the parking lot." Everyone moved. Outside, the street was lined with motorcycles. Dozens, rows of shining chrome, some dusty, some dented, all roaring with memory. More veterans stood waiting, some leaning on canes, others in wheelchairs, all with the same look. Brotherhood. This wasn't planned. It was word of mouth. A single call had reached the ears of every forgotten warrior in the county. And they came. The officers stared at the scene like it was an invasion. But the captain stepped forward, nodding slowly. "They remember," he said almost to himself. "Even when we forget, they remember." One of the veterans lit a cigar, slow and proud. Another saluted the old man as he stepped outside. Cameras were already flashing, news vans pulling up. The humiliation had gone public. The young teen sat in the back of a cruiser, head in his hands. The veteran walked over. "You have parents?" he asked. "A home?" The boy shook his head. "Just a shelter." The soldier said nothing for a moment. Then he looked at the captain. "Let me talk to him alone." Permission was granted. He opened the door, slid in next to the boy, and said, "I've buried friends for less than what you took." The boy couldn't meet his eyes. "Are you going to beat me?" he asked. The veteran let out a single dry laugh. "No, I'm going to tell you about the woman whose flag you stole. And when I'm done, you're going to return it with your own hands. And if you want to make something of yourself after that, you come find me. I've trained boys into men before." The kid started crying. The veteran didn't stop him. He waited, silent, then slowly stepped out of the car and shut the door. His brothers were waiting, lined up like a guard of honor. And for the first time that day, he allowed himself a breath that didn't feel heavy. The shame was still there, but so was something else. The power of being seen, and far in the distance, someone whispered, "That's him. That's the old soldier they humiliated." The boy stood motionless in the middle of the lobby, eyes locked on the folded flag in his trembling hands. The station was quieter than usual, the usual bustle swallowed by the presence of history lined up behind him. Each veteran stood still, not glaring, not forgiving, but watching. The weight of their silence pressed harder than any jail cell. The flag felt heavier than it should have, like it carried more than just fabric and memory, it carried judgment. The old man stepped forward, the slightest limp in his right leg more noticeable, now that the adrenaline had faded. His voice didn't rise or tremble, it came low and even, like a man who had seen too many funerals to fake emotion. "You walked into my house and thought you found junk," he said. "That flag was over my wife's coffin 3 months ago. My daughter folded it. My grandson kissed it before they lowered her into the ground." The boy's lip quivered, but he didn't speak. "You stole pain," the soldier continued. "You didn't know it, but you did. And when you touched it, you touched every bullet I dodged to make it home to her. Every promise I kept that others couldn't. You touched a lifetime I can't get back." He extended a hand, not to take the flag, but to steady the boy's shaking. Slowly, deliberately, the teenager stepped forward and placed a folded triangle in the veteran's arms. No words, just gravity. The moment was raw and unpolished. No applause, no music, just breath. The kind of breath that hangs in church pews after eulogies. The soldier nodded once and turned, facing his brothers. "We'll talk later," he said to the boy. "For now, you owe every man here a look in the eye." The teen nodded, unsure but obedient. And so he did one by one, face to face, shame soaking through him like rain. Each veteran returned the look, and none turned away. Outside, The street was still packed with motorcycles and quiet murmurs. The news vans had left after the press conference, and most of the city had gone back to ignoring the world behind their screens. But inside the station, something irreversible had occurred. The old man looked around the lobby. Same cracked tile, same crooked blinds, but now it felt different. Like something had been returned to its rightful place, not just the flag, but his name. The captain approached slowly, arms folded, lips pressed into a line. "We've issued the arrest report on Dawson. He's got a bench warrant now. Turns out your guys were right. He skipped parole check-ins and disappeared 2 days ago." The veteran didn't answer. He simply nodded, like the outcome had been inevitable. "We're reopening your break-in case formally," the captain added. This time, with respect. One of the other veterans stepped beside the old man. "We'd like to help," he said. "Fix the house, replace what was stolen, maybe reinforce some of the doors." The old man looked at him, brow furrowing. "You think I need help securing a house?" The veteran smirked. "No, I think we need it. Gives us something to fight again. A reason to pick up a hammer instead of a bottle." The truth sat between them, unspoken. So many of these men had come home in pieces, not just physically, but in soul. War gave them a mission, civilian life stripped that away. Now, in a broken front door and a shattered photo frame, they found a new kind of mission. One that didn't require bullets but demanded heart. And they were ready for it. 3 days later, the work began. Trucks pulled into the old soldier's driveway before dawn. Tools rattled, boots studded. Laughter echoed gruff, hard-earned, the kind only shared by people who've buried friends and survived the same hell. The boy showed up too, shoulders tight, holding a paint roller like it might explode. No one mocked him. No one welcomed him either. They just handed him a bucket and pointed at the wall. By noon, the house already looked different. The front gate had been welded back into place. A new security light blinked on and off above the porch. Inside, one of the men replaced shattered glass in the hallway photo frames. "She was beautiful," he said quietly, pointing to a wedding picture. The veteran nodded. "And patient. Waited through every deployment. Smiled through every missed holiday. Carried the weight I brought back." His voice broke slightly. Upstairs, the boy was vacuuming glass bits from the carpet when he found something, a small metal trinket under the dresser. A bullet casing, polished, engraved with a date. He picked it up gently and brought it down to the living room. "I think this belongs to you." The old man stared at it for a long time. "That's from 2006, a roadside in Kandahar. That casing hit my vest after it bounced off a wall. I kept it, called it luck." The boy swallowed. I was going to pawn it." The veteran didn't flinch. "But you didn't. Not this one." He took it, placed it gently on the mantel, then turned to the boy again. "Do you want to learn what it meant? What it costs?" The boy nodded. And with that, the soldier told him. Not everything, but enough. Enough to make the room feel heavier. Enough to make the boy sit down and actually listen for the first time in years. Night fell. The work slowed. Some of the men stayed for dinner, grilled meat, old jokes, quiet music playing from a dusty radio. The soldier watched them all from the porch. One hand wrapped around a mug of coffee, the other still resting near the flag now displayed once more in its case. Not a word was said about the police, not about the shame. That part had already left the station and echoed its way across every bar and locker room in town. They'd made their point. Then a knock came at the door. Not loud, not rushed, just 3 slow taps. The veteran opened it and found a woman in uniform local PD. She looked nervous, younger than most, but her eyes were firm. "Sir," she said, holding out a sealed envelope. "The department voted on a formal apology. It's written here. I was asked to deliver it personally." The old man took it but didn't open it. "Why you?" She hesitated. "Because my father served, and I argued for it, loudly." He looked at her, then back at the room behind him filled with the laughter of the forgotten. "Tell them we got it. But we've already moved on." She nodded, saluted without being asked, and walked back down the path under the moonlight. Inside, the boy was laughing now real laughter, not the sarcastic kind. The veterans joined him, and the old man finally exhaled. For the first time in months, maybe years, he didn't feel invisible. He felt needed, not pitied, not symbolic. Just a man surrounded by brothers, teaching one more stray how to stand tall without carrying a rifle. And somewhere far from the house, Carl Dawson watched the news clip of the event on a broken motel TV, his name now red stamped as a wanted man. The motel reeked of mold and desperation. Flickering neon lit the peeling wallpaper like a strobe in a forgotten dive bar. Carl Dawson sat hunched over the cracked TV, jaw clenched, thumb tapping the side of a pistol he hadn't cleaned in weeks. His name was everywhere, now newspapers, online posts, whispered in alleys like an urban legend. The thief who stole a soldier's flag. But Carl wasn't afraid. He was angry. Not at the cops. Not even at the old man. He was angry because he'd been seen. He replayed the news footage on his phone, zooming in on the house, on the motorcycles, on the faces. Brothers in arms, the reporter called them. A show of loyalty and strength. Carl spit on the floor. Brothers, he muttered. Where were my brothers when I was living under a bridge in '09? He looked at the camera angles showing the boy handing back the flag. His eyes narrowed. That kid was with me once. Little Punk was tagging walls and running from group homes. Now he's playing Boy Scout for some broken war dog. He stood and paced the room, pistol now in hand, finger brushing the trigger like it was a prayer bead. They don't get to win, he growled. They don't get to walk out of that station like kings while I rot in this dump. He kicked over a chair and stared at the duffel bag in the corner half full with stolen watches, pawn slips, a pair of bolt cutters. But buried beneath it all was something else, a keychain with a military insignia. One he'd stolen long before this mess. One he kept. Back at the veteran's house, things had quieted. The repairs were nearly done, but the porch was still crowded most afternoons. The old man, now known by neighbors as Sarge, had become something of a local symbol. Reporters still called, but he declined every interview. We're not a story, he told them. We're a reminder. Inside, the boy had moved into the guest room temporarily. Not because he asked, but because he stayed, worked, helped, listened. He swept the floors that day without being told, then paused to stare at the photo wall. So many uniforms. So many folded flags. Were they all in the same war? He asked. The old man looked up from the table where he was sorting through letters. No. Different wars. Same weight. He stood, walked over, and pointed. That's Eddie, Vietnam. Came home to a punch in the face. That's Torres, Iraq. Saved my life with a tourniquet and a bad joke. The boy squinted at the faded images. How come you all still talk? He asked. Even after all these years? The veteran smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Because there's only one place in the world where silence doesn't mean distance, and that's war. You stop talking there. It's because you're dead. Here, we talk because we remember who made it back, and who didn't. The boy nodded slowly. So that means I'm not dead yet? Not yet, the veteran replied. But you were close. That night, something changed. A car was seen idling down the block. Same model as the one seen on pawn shop cameras last week. A black sedan with a dented rear bumper and a piece of duct tape holding the passenger mirror. One of the veterans spotted it while walking the dog. The next morning, they compared notes. Could be Dawson, one of them said, or someone else he's working with. The veterans didn't panic. They planned. Cameras were installed discreet, high angle, connected to a retired Army IT guy who now lived in a van. Shifts were organized. The boy was told not to go anywhere alone. This isn't paranoia, the old man said. It's protocol. But the boy felt it in his stomach, that cold awareness he used to feel while sleeping in shelters. Something was coming, something worse than guilt. 2 days later, it came. At 2:13 a.m., the house alarm triggered. Front window shattered. No one got in, but the glass was meant as a message, not an entry. The flag display had been targeted. A rock through the center of the window, wrapped in paper. On it, written in black Sharpie, "You took my name. I'll take yours." The police arrived late. The veterans had already done a full sweep. No prints, no license plate. Just boot prints, cheap, worn, size 11. The boy sat in the kitchen, hands clenched around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. "He's coming for you," he whispered. The veteran didn't flinch. He already came, and he failed. "But what if he tries again?" the boy asked. "He will," the old man replied, "because men like him don't just want revenge. They want to rewrite their own story. He doesn't care about jail. He wants erasure." The boy looked confused. "What does that mean?" The veteran leaned in, voice low. "He wants to turn this whole thing into a lie. Make people say, maybe the soldier deserved it. Maybe he was lying. Maybe the kid was scared. He wants to rot the story from inside. Make it all feel worthless." The boy didn't answer. He understood too well, because that's what he used to do. To teachers, to social workers, to everyone who tried to help. But this was different. Later that afternoon, a local podcast released a video clip. Blurry footage of Carl Dawson ranting in a motel parking lot, recorded by a neighbor with shaky hands. He mentioned the station, the old man, the military gang. The video ended with Dawson pointing directly at the camera. "Tell them I'm not done," he growled. "Tell them I want my name back." The video went viral. Comments exploded. Support, mockery, conspiracy. Everyone had an opinion. The veterans watched it in silence. "Looks like he's daring us," one of them muttered. Another nodded. "Then let's answer the dare." Plans were drawn. Patrols rotated. The boy trained self-defense basics, situational awareness, even how to hold a flashlight with intent. "You're not a soldier," the old man told him. "But you can still be someone who doesn't freeze when it counts." The boy absorbed every word, not because he feared Dawson, but because he didn't want to be the reason someone else got hurt. And then came the package. Delivered with no return address, inside, the flag, or what was left of it, burned on one corner, torn across the stripes. A second note inside read, "You should have stayed invisible, old man." The room went still. No one spoke. The old man picked up the ruined cloth, held it in both hands, and closed his eyes. Then he folded it gently, precisely, even though it didn't fold right anymore. He placed it back into the case. "We don't retaliate," he said finally. "Not his way." The boy stared at the blackened edge. "So what do we do?" The old man looked out the window. "We remind him what brotherhood really means. And we do it the way he can't touch." Far off in a church basement that hadn't seen life in years, the veterans met, quietly, not for revenge, but for something older, something sacred. They gathered around an old wooden table, laid out a new flag, a replacement. But this one wasn't just for one man. It was for every man who'd ever been forgotten, laughed at, dismissed. This flag will be sewn by hand, touched by story, blessed with memory. The war wasn't over, but this time it wouldn't be fought with bullets. The sewing machine clicked like a steady heartbeat inside the old church basement, its rhythm broken only by the hum of overhead fans and the quiet murmur of war stories. The new flag lay stretched across the long table, its fabric not just stitched, but signed. One veteran wrote the name of a fallen brother inside a white stripe. Another marked the spot where his best friend bled out in a rice field decades ago. This wasn't a flag born of a store. It was born of pain, of memory, of purpose. The boy sat at the corner, watching it all unfold like a ritual. He didn't speak. He barely moved. But his eyes darted from hand to hand, face to face. He was beginning to understand something unteachable, how men bound by loss often speak loudest through silence. The old soldier stood nearby, arms crossed, watching his brothers finish the work. "You don't replace a flag like that," one of them said. "But you can build something no one can burn." The old man nodded. "It's not just for me. It's for all of us. By nightfall, the flag was done. They stood and folded the military way tight, slow, with precision and breath between each fold. The last edge was tucked in, and the triangle placed into a custom-made shadow box built by hand. The boy stepped forward and stared at it. "Can I carry it back?" he asked, voice steady. No one stopped him. He took it with both arms, careful like he was holding a heartbeat. As they exited the basement, headlights flashed from across the street. A black sedan idled under a broken street lamp. The veterans moved into instinct. 3 spread out. 1 raised the phone. The boy stood still, clutching the flag tighter. The old man stepped in front of him, face stone cold. But the sedan pulled off slow, deliberate, tires squealing just slightly as it disappeared into the dark. "He's watching us," someone said. "He wanted us to see him." The old man exhaled, jaw locked. "Good. Now let him see what strength looks like." Back at the house, the flag was mounted in the entryway. Above it hung a new plaque, "To those who carried us home." The boy touched the glass once, then stepped away. He didn't sleep that night. None of them did. They sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee, playing cards, telling stories that had never been told before. Some laughed, some cried, but all listened. And above them, the new flag glowed under a soft lamp like a watchful spirit. 2 days later, a knock at the door changed everything. It was too early for deliveries, too late for emergencies. When the old man opened it, he found a woman with tired eyes and a broken purse strap. "You don't know me," she said, "but you knew my brother, Carl." The name hit the air like a stray shot. The veterans inside paused, looked up. The woman continued, "I haven't seen him in 3 years. Not since he vanished off parole. But I saw the news. I know he's hurting people. I'm scared he's going to get himself killed." The old man stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "He sent threats, damaged property, burned the flag that covered my wife's casket." The woman nodded, guilt in every line of her face. "I know. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm asking if you'll meet him. Once, he asked for you." The soldier's eyebrows lifted. "Why now?" She shrugged. "He said you were the only man who ever looked at him like he wasn't trash." That day at the station, before everything blew up. Inside, the boy stood with one hand on the doorframe. "It's a trap," he said. One of the older vets nodded. "Could be. Could be real, too." The old man stared at the horizon. "Either way, we don't flinch." He turned to the woman. "Where?" She handed him a note. "He's holed up in the wreckage of that old auto garage off 14th. Said to come alone. Said he'd wait until sundown." Then she turned and left. By late afternoon, the sky was turning amber. The house was quiet, tense. The old man suited up, not in combat gear, not in armor, but in the jacket he wore to every funeral of a fallen brother, the one with the bloodstain near the pocket. He tucked something into the inside lining of a folded photo. Not a weapon. A reminder. The boy followed him to the door. "You're really going?" "I have to," the old man said. Some wars end in silence. He walked the block slowly. No backup. No eyes behind him. Just wind and memory. The garage came into view, boarded windows, half a roof, graffiti scarred across the walls. Inside, Carl sat slumped against a workbench, pistol in his lap, eyes red from more than just rage. "Took you long enough," he said. "You brought backup?" "No," the old man said. "I brought the truth." Carl scoffed. "I bet you think you're the hero in all this." "No," the vet replied. "I think I'm the last person who still remembers you used to be more than this." Carl stood slowly. The pistol hung loose in his grip. "I wanted people to respect me again," he said. "You walked in that station and stole the moment, took what little voice I had left." "I didn't take it," the old man said. "You gave it away the day you turned your back on every man who once had your 6. Carl's lip curled. "You think that flag means more than survival?" The veteran stepped closer. "No, I think it means sacrifice. Something you stopped doing the moment you decided everyone else was the enemy." Carl raised the pistol. Not aimed. Not steady. Just there. You came to die, then? The veteran didn't flinch. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the photo, a snapshot of Carl, younger, standing with a group of soldiers. You remember this? He asked. You still mattered then. You still cared. Carl looked at the photo like it burned his eyes. That was before prison, before everyone gave up on me. The veteran stepped even closer. We never gave up. You just stopped answering. The pistol lowered, shaking. I don't know how to come back. Then don't, the old man said. Start forward instead. Outside, 2 distant sirens echoed. Carl looked out the window. They're coming for me. Let them, the veteran said. But let them find a man who's ready to face it, not a coward hiding behind a gun. Carl dropped the pistol. It hit the floor with a dull clunk. His knees followed. The old man didn't move. He just stood there, solid, present, like he had so many years ago when younger men were bleeding on foreign soil. When the police arrived, they found Carl handcuffed, sitting on the floor, eyes clearer than they'd been in years. He said I could come back, he told them. So I gave myself in before I ruined it for good. The officer raised an eyebrow. Who said that? Carl looked toward the street, but the old man was already gone. Back at the house, the boy waited. He didn't ask what happened when the door finally opened. He just stepped aside and let the old man pass. The others were waiting. The flag still hung in silence. And for the first time, the old soldier allowed himself to sit not in tension, not in battle, but in peace. A small one, but earned. Outside, the last orange light of dusk faded. The war wasn't over, but this battle was won the only way it ever could be, without hate. When the sun rose, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like the silence before another storm. The house was still, too still. The kind of stillness that comes after an explosion, where everything looks normal, but you know something shifted underneath. The old man sat alone on the porch, coffee untouched, eyes locked on the horizon. Across the lawn, the boy adjusted the flag again, as if keeping it straight could keep the world from falling apart. Inside, the others moved slower than usual. No one said it, but they were waiting. For news, for trouble, for the next hit. Carl had turned himself in, but that didn't erase the trail of damage he left behind, or the people he owed blood to. They all knew it wasn't just Carl out there. Men like him didn't rise alone. They were propped up by darker hands, ones that didn't like peace, or witnesses, or honor. By noon, the first call came. It wasn't from the station. It was from an old number 1 of their own, Jimmy Reese, Vietnam vet. Mia, from every reunion for the last 12 years. His voice was cracked with age and whiskey. They're coming for you boys, he said. Whatever Carl stirred up, it's bigger now, real big. The old man stepped inside, put the phone on speaker. What do you mean bigger? Jimmy sighed. Black SUVs, private tags. Government types, but not the good kind. I saw him in town yesterday, asking about the flag. About the kid. The room froze. All eyes went to the boy, who was now by the back window, hand pressed to the glass. He didn't look scared. He looked ready, and that was worse. Because readiness like that doesn't belong to kids. It belongs to survivors. The old man hung up the phone. Get your gear, he said. But we're not running. We're holding. Like always. They didn't have rifles anymore. Most had been sold or buried or locked away when they signed the papers that said, "Thank you for your service." But service doesn't end with ink. It ends with breath. And until then, these men would fight with whatever they had, tools, fists, memories. In the garage, one laid out knives like surgical instruments. Another rewired a floodlight system to blind anyone who stepped wrong at night. The boy was handed a walkie, not a weapon. A line. The old man crouched beside him. You don't shoot. You signal. You see movement, we talk, not fight. Understood? The boy nodded. Yes, sir. Good. Because this isn't war. This is defense. There's a difference. But in his gut, the old man knew the lines were already blurred. Whatever was coming wasn't just revenge, it was a test. Not of strength, of resolve. The first SUV rolled past at 2:16 p.m. Slow, tinted, no plates, just presence. It didn't stop, didn't even hesitate, but everyone inside knew that was the start. The others followed, 2 more, then 3, parked a block away. Watched, waited, didn't move, just enough to be legal, just enough to be unnerving. One of the vets, Manny, ex-Marine sniper, stepped outside with a soda in hand and stared at them for 15 minutes straight. Then walked back in and said, "They blinked first." But the game wasn't intimidation. It was attrition. By nightfall, they cut the power. Not just the house, the block. The whole street went dark like a switch flipped in hell. Generators kicked in old loud and shaky, but they worked. Barely. The veterans gathered in the kitchen, candles burning low, hands dirty with engine oil and grit. "This is pressure," one said. "They want us scared." "Then we don't scare," the old man replied. "We show them what patience looks like." Outside, the boy crept toward the fence line with his walkie clipped tight. He wasn't told to patrol, but he needed to. He needed to prove something. To them, to himself. That he wasn't just some charity case under a flag. That he belonged. He moved low, quiet the way the old man had taught him. Then he saw it movement in the alley. A figure. No face. Just shape and breath. He pressed the walkie. Contact. Realign. One figure. No reply. Then static. Then nothing. He ran. Inside, the radios were silent. No signal. The backup batteries had drained too fast. Too clean. Someone was bleeding their systems from outside. The old man looked around. "Where's the boy?" No one answered. Check the back. They bolted. Outside, the boy was cornered. Not by one man. By 2. Then 3. They wore civilian clothes, but moved like trained dogs, silent, coordinated. "Come with us," one said. "No one needs to get hurt." The boy backed up until his spine hit a tree. "This is veteran property," he said, trembling but firm. "You have no right." One of them stepped forward. "You think we care about rights? We want what he's hiding." "You're just a tool." The boy clenched his fists. "I'm not a tool. I'm a soldier." Then came the sound. Boots, gravel, leather on dirt. Then the old man's voice low, cold thunder and flesh. "You boys lost?" The agents turned. 3 red dots painted their chests in perfect unison. The others had arrived: Manny, Hank, Luis. No rifles, but laser sights mounted on old gear, and enough history behind their fists to make giants fall. The men froze. One flinched. "You won't shoot," he said. The old man stepped into the light. "Try me." There was no fight, only retreat. Quick, quiet, without words. But the message was clear. This was just the beginning. Inside, the boy was silent for the rest of the night. Not shaken, not broken, just change. He had seen it now. The line. The invisible line between boy and brother. And he had stepped across it. The old man sat with him on the porch, watching the darkness rebuild itself. "He'll come again," the boy said. The veteran nodded. "And we'll be ready." "They want something," the boy whispered. "But it's not just Carl. It's bigger than him." "It always is," the man replied. "But so are we. Because we don't fight alone." And for the first time since it all began, the boy reached out and held the old man's hand. No words. Just grip. Just wait. Just bond. The next morning came fast, as if sleep had been too afraid to stay. The boy hadn't moved from the porch bench all night, and neither had the old man beside him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The silence between them was louder than the threats outside. When the sun rose, it didn't warm the house, it exposed it. The cracks, the weaknesses, the soft parts. And those watching from the street saw everything. Carl wasn't in the news, but the house was. Someone leaked photos, grainy but deliberate. Veterans gathered in militia-style fashion, a child present. Weapons suspected. Words like paramilitary and instability were tossed around by anchors in polished suits who never once buried a friend or folded a flag. The narrative flipped in hours. These men weren't guardians anymore. They were threats. And that was all the excuse the agencies needed. By noon, a city truck parked at the end of the block. Then another. Then a van marked Public Works, but with antennas too long and windows too dark. The power came back on, but the phone stayed silent. Calls wouldn't connect. Signals looped. Surveillance choked the air like fog. The veterans gathered inside again, but this time, something was different. Not fear exposure. The war was no longer coming to them quietly. It was putting on a badge and calling them criminals. They debated for hours. "Maybe we speak out," Louis said. "Tell our side." "No one wants our side," Hank muttered. "They've already picked their villain." "We need the public," Manny added. "They won't shoot what the cameras love." The old man stayed silent until they all looked to him. Then he said, "Then we give them what they can't twist." He walked outside in full dress uniform. Not the dusty boots and flannels they'd worn for days. Full ribbons, clean lines, polished shoes. The uniform the country gave him back when it still respected the men it dressed. The others followed, one by one. Same uniform, different war. The boys stood behind them, silent but glowing with pride. And the neighbors came out too. Cameras, phones, eyes. For the first time in days, the eyes were filled with suspicion. They were filled with questions. The old man raised his voice, not yelling, not pleading. Just enough to carry. "We are not enemies. We are veterans. We defended this flag in places most men have never heard of. We bled for it, buried for it. And now we protect what's left of it right here, on this street, for this boy." A woman from down the block stepped forward. "I saw the vans, the agents. What do they want?" The old man looked at her and said the truth. "They want us quiet. They want him scared, but this boy's family didn't make it back. We're all he's got, so we're staying, no matter what comes." The woman looked at the boy, then turned to the gathering crowd. "Then we'll stay too." That night the street was full. Neighbors brought chairs, lights, food, a community barbecue that doubled as a human shield. The SUVs didn't return that evening, but drones circled high, watching, logging, waiting for the moment they could call a smile a conspiracy. At 2 a.m., the drone went down, shot, jammed. No one claimed it, but it crashed 3 blocks over into a school field. News broke fast. Veterans interfere with federal surveillance. The spin was rapid, ruthless. Headlines called them radicals, extremists. Even the boy's photo was used blurred, but recognizable. By dawn, the war wasn't local anymore. It was national. And the boy was now a symbol. The old man watched it all unfold from a diner TV. He stirred his coffee slowly, eyes fixed on the screen. "They want a reason to break us." Manny sat beside him, jaw tight. "So we give them something else." The waitress refilled their cups. "You boys need anything else?" The old man looked at her and said, "Yeah, a stage." She smiled. "You already got one." The whole country's watching. Back at the house, the boy was at the table with the others, drawing a flag, but not the stars and stripes. His version had something else. Hands, linked across the middle, a line of boots underneath. No rifles, just footprints. The old man walked in, took one look at it, and nodded. "You're not just part of this, son. You are this." But outside, the wheels were turning, not with SUVs, with policy, emergency motions, federal sanctions. A judge 2 counties oversigned an order, one that classified the home as a potential domestic security concern. The door knock came at 9:17 a.m. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. 12 agents, 2 local sheriffs, 1 thin sheet of paper. The old man read it once, then twice. "Eviction for public safety." Manny stepped forward. "This is illegal." One agent shrugged. Welcome to the new rules. They had 48 hours to leave, or be removed. But this house wasn't just wood and nails. It was a monument. Not to war, to brotherhood, to survival. To promises made over dying bodies that no man gets left behind. The old man turned to his brothers. We don't leave. Hank nodded. Not ever. The boy stood up too. If you go, I go. The old man placed a hand on his shoulder. You stay. No matter what happens next, you stay. Because what happens next will echo. The 48-hour clock started ticking the moment the agents drove off. But no one inside the house treated it like a countdown to surrender. If anything, it felt like the beginning of something they had trained for their entire lives. The old man stood by the window, watching the neighbors shuffle back to their homes, uncertain now. The barbecue unity was gone, replaced by nervous blinds and muted whispers. Fear was contagious, and the city was passing it around like candy. The boy sat at the kitchen table, drawing again. This time it wasn't a flag. It was a map. The street. The alleys. Points of cover. Manny looked over his shoulder, eyebrows raised. Who taught you how to map terrain? The boy didn't look up. You all did, just by living. Hank laughed bitterly from the hallway. Kids learning faster than we did in boot. But the old man didn't smile. He just watched the street and said, because he has to. At midnight, the signal jammers returned. Phones died, radios hissed. Even the street lights flickered with strange rhythm. This wasn't just intimidation now. It was isolation. Cut them off. Starve them out. Wait until even memory feels like a liability. The veterans gathered in the living room, rifles disassembled on the floor, not to fight but to clean. Like a ritual. Like remembering. Each man moved with muscle memory from wars that weren't supposed to follow them home. Louise lit a candle and placed it in the center. We used to do this before missions. Light, focus, resolve. The flame danced across their faces, aging them even more. The boy leaned closer. Are we going to war? The old man met his eyes. Only if they make us. Outside, cars passed slowly. Not neighbors, watchers. Their lights off. Engines idling. A chill settled over the block, even though the air was still. It wasn't weather. It was warning. Day 2 arrived without a sound. No knocks. No demands. Just silence so loud it felt planned. The boy walked the perimeter with Manny, noting shifts. New cameras had been installed on street poles. Tighter drones flew overhead, their wings slicing the air like razors. At noon, the first false story hit the networks. Veterans stockpiling weapons in suburban standoff. Child may be in psychological danger. The images were cropped, twisted. The boy's drawings shown as manifestos. His flag called a militant symbol. They weren't just being erased. They were being rewritten. By nightfall, the crowd returned. But this time they weren't neighbors. Protesters, outsiders, hired cameras, and angry signs. Some screamed. Some cried. But all of them looked through the house like it was already a tomb. Inside, Luis turned off the lights. We're not a show. But the cameras stayed. More vans parked along the block. Someone with a megaphone yelled for the boy to be released to state care. Hank paced. This is theater. They want a trigger. The old man nodded. Then we don't give them one. But that night, something changed. A brick came through the window. It shattered the table the boy had been sitting at minutes earlier. Glass sprayed across his drawing, turning lines into scars. The boy didn't cry. He just stared. The old man pulled him back and handed him a new piece of paper. Start again. That one was for them. This one's for you. The veterans reinforced the windows, reinforced each other. But even walls with nails and plywood couldn't stop the smell of fear. At 3 a.m., the power cut again. Total blackout. Only candlelight and breath held the night together. The boy couldn't sleep. He sat between the old man and Manny, eyes wide. What if they come in the dark? The old man rested a hand on his shoulder. Then we make the dark ours. He handed the boy a flashlight. Not just light. A signal. One flash. Two flashes. One again. The same rhythm used by soldiers trapped behind enemy lines. The boy memorized it. Before dawn, movement returned. Footsteps outside. Boots. Silent coordination. Not police. Train. Someone was circling the house with purpose. Manny tapped the window glass twice a signal. Everyone froze. The air held its breath. Then, a whisper from the back door. "It's me." "Don't shoot." They opened it slowly. It was a soldier. Not in uniform. Civilian clothes. Dirty. Out of breath. But the way he moved gave him away. He was one of them. "You got a mole," he said, hands shaking. "Inside the department." "They're not waiting for 48 hours. They're coming tonight. Full team." They want it quiet. The old man stared at him. "Why tell us?" The soldier pulled something from his jacket. A photo. An old one. A younger version of the old man, arms slung around another soldier. "My father. He said if I ever had to choose between orders and honor, I should find the man who saved his life in Kabul. That was you." They let him in. And then the house changed. The mission became real. They didn't plan for violence. They planned to survive it. Evade. Escape. Record. The soldier laid out blueprints. Weak points. Infrared blind spots. He pointed to a crawl space. "The boy hides here, no matter what." The boy looked at him. "I'm not hiding." The soldier knelt. "You're not. You're surviving. And when this is over, you tell the world." The sun rose like a final warning. Chapter 7 ends with the house holding its breath, every wall listening, every heartbeat sensing to the rhythm of an old war with a new face. The siege wasn't announced. It was whispered. But everyone inside knew ... tonight. It begins. The house was quiet, but no one inside it rested. Every breath felt borrowed, every second stretched thin like wire about to snap. The boy sat cross-legged under the table, flashlight in hand, tracing the signal code again and again on his leg. One flash. Two. One. It was all he had now. Outside, the world moved like a beast with many eyes, silent, circling, waiting for the moment to strike. And somewhere in that dark, the clock had already passed midnight. In the living room, the old man stood over the table, maps and radios spread before him. Luis and Manny flanked the front and back doors, rifles low but ready. The young soldier, Elias, moved with trained precision, checking trip signals on the windows, repositioning the crawl space cover. He'd barely spoken since the warning. Just worked. Focus. As if silence could hold back fate a little longer. Hank returned from the roof, dirt on his face. 2 vans. No lights, parked a block away. They're watching, waiting for a window. He wiped his brow with a shaking hand. "They're not going to knock." Luis met his eyes. "We knew that." Then Elias spoke quietly. "They're waiting for the signal. Not from the field team, from someone higher, political clearance. If it comes, they move." The old man's voice cracked through the silence. "Then we give them a reason not to." He pointed to the camera gear Weiss had set up in the dining room. "We go live." Manny raised a brow. "You sure? That'll paint a target on us faster." But the old man shook his head. "No, it makes us too visible to erase. They want a ghost op. We shine floodlights on them." And just like that, the mission changed again. They wired the feed in minutes. A laptop on the kitchen counter blinked to life. Audio, video, heartbeat. The old man stepped in the frame. The boy behind him. He didn't shout. He didn't plead. He told the truth, clean and clear, like a confession made to history. He spoke of loyalty, of the boy, of the betrayal, of the silent siege wrapped around their home. As he talked, the boy stood tall beside him, holding his new drawing, not of a flag, but of the house surrounded by hands, all of them open. The stream ran for 6 minutes. Long enough to draw attention. Long enough to make killing them complicated. Comments poured in. Screenshots exploded online. And far away, someone watching from a dark room slammed their fist on a table. "Pull the plug. Get the clearance. Tonight, we end it." The order moved like wildfire. Operators were activated. Lights turned red, radios went dead. And within the hour, the street fell silent again. Too silent. Inside, the house responded like a single body. Hank loaded his sidearm. Luis checked angles. Manny whispered final plans into Elias's ear. The boy was dressed in dark clothes now, face marked with streaks of ash. A trick from Luis to break up his shape in shadows. The old man watched them all and then locked eyes with the boy. Whatever happens, you keep moving. If we fall, you carry the story. Then, the first sound. A thud. Roof side. Light. Quiet, but unmistakable. Hank motioned silently. Roof breach team. Louise moved toward the back door. The lock was turning. Elias pointed. They're in. But it wasn't panic. It was calculation. The old man didn't freeze. He spoke only once, positions. And every veteran vanished into the shadows of the house like ghosts returning to war. A flashbang hit the kitchen. Light, sound, chaos. But the veterans had prepped. Ears protected, eyes closed. They moved with instinct. 2 men entered from the rear, silent, masked, efficient. But they hadn't expected resistance. Elias tackled the first, disarmed him, and dragged him into the pantry. No gunfire, no noise, only breathing. Louise neutralized the second with a chokehold that ended fast. Meanwhile, the boy crawled to the safe corner. Flashlight off. Signal rhythm in his chest. 1-2-1. He heard the footsteps. Not heavy. Deliberate. Not running. Searching. And then, someone stepped into the room. A silhouette. Tall. Armed. The boy stayed low, hard a hammer in his chest. The soldier paused. Raised his radio. Then, silence. The soldier backed out. Some still had lines they wouldn't cross. But others didn't. From the front door, a new breach erupted. This time loud, brutal, aggressive. Hank was thrown back by a shield, groaning. 2 agents stormed the hallway. The old man fired once, above their heads. Back off! One agent hesitated. The other didn't. He charged, and met Elias head-on. It was quick, controlled, painful. Elias broke the charge, flipped the man, and held him down. We don't want blood, he yelled. But from outside, another voice called through a megaphone. Final warning, stand down. Or we take the house. No one inside moved. The old man stepped out with his hands up. This is our line. We don't cross it. And neither should you. He raised the boys, drawing high into the air. The house, the hands. We're not your enemy. For a long moment, no one fired. No one moved. The agent stood frozen. Then, one began to lower his weapon. But it wasn't over. A voice crackled through the radios, cold, distant, authoritative. Green light confirmed. Take them. And just like that, the siege began in full. Drones dropped canisters. Gas filled the rooms. The veterans grabbed masks, yelling for the boy. But the crawl space was sealed, and he was inside, safe, listening. He heard them fight. He heard glass break, bodies fall, wood splinter. He heard the world end, not with a bomb, but with boots. Then silence. Hours passed, maybe minutes. Time twisted. When the trapdoor opened again, a hand reached in, gentle, familiar. It was Elias. Come on, kid. We made it. But as the boy crawled out, his eyes searched the room. Hank. Down. Lise. Gown. Manny. Alive, but coughing. And the old man, gone. Chapter 8 ends not in victory or defeat, but in loss. A leader vanished, a truth buried. A boy made older by the sound of surrender. The boy sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled like gun oil and sweat. Morning light crept slowly over the shattered street, casting long shadows from the broken fence posts. Police tape fluttered at the end of the block, but no one dared cross it. Cameras were gone, drones silent, and in the stillness, all that remained was the boy and the silence of a war that never made the news. Inside the house, Manny coughed blood into a rag. Louise sat with a cracked rib and a hollow stare, watching the front window like it still posed a threat. Elias hadn't spoken much since dragging the boy from the crawl space. His hands were scraped, his shirt torn. But his eyes, they hadn't blinked when the others were taken. Not when Hank was zipped up. Not when they couldn't find the old man's body. Just silence. Like something inside him had shut off. That afternoon, the boy found a broken camera in the bush. The stream set up crushed but not erased. He brought it inside, placed it on the table, and stared at the cracked lens. "They didn't get everything," he whispered. Manny looked over, brow furrowed. "They got enough." Elias finally turned. But not him. Louise raised a tired eyebrow. "You think he's alive?" Elias nodded once. "He told us to hold the line." "That means he's not done." A week passed. Then another. No news. No warrants. Just silence. The kind that tastes like unfinished war. Manny left first. Said his lungs wouldn't handle another ambush. Louise stayed, helping fix what was left of the house. Boarded windows, patched roof. Elias took the boy out to the field every morning, running drills. Teaching him signals, movement. Words didn't pass much between them, but trust did. One night, the boy found Elias sitting with the old man's medals laid out on a cloth. He didn't touch them, just stared. "He kept this one," Elias murmured, pointing to a bent silver star. "Not for glory, for the man it belonged to. He carried ghosts. Now I carry his." The boy didn't reply. Just sat down beside him, hand resting near the medal, but never touching it. Like a vow made in silence. Then came the letter. No stamp, no name. Just a folded paper slid under the door. Elias opened it, read once, and handed it to Luis. No emotion, no change in voice. He's alive, and he's calling. The paper had coordinates. A time, nothing more. Luis didn't ask questions. He stood, picked up his pack, and nodded. "We move." The boy looked between them. "We all go?" Elias looked down. "No, you stay. We need someone to keep watch. If we don't come back, this house stays ready." The boy wanted to argue, but he didn't. That night, Elias and Lee's left gear light, weapons hidden. They didn't take a vehicle, just shadows and memory. They vanished into the outskirts like wolves returning to the wild. The boy sat in the living room, flashlight off, signal tapped onto his leg like a heartbeat. 121, 121. Waiting. 3 nights passed. On the 4th, the knock came. Soft, rhythmic, code. The boy ran to the door, flung it open. But it wasn't Elias. It wasn't Luis. It was a woman's sharp eyes, military boots, and a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. "You're the kid," she said. "I was told you'd know the knock." He nodded slowly. "Who sent you?" Her jaw tightened. "The man who never left. He's building something. Underground. Said the next fight won't be in this house." She stepped inside. Looked around. "Place smells like fire and memory. You hold it well." She walked over to the table, pulled out a small hard drive, and set it down. "This has every record. Names, orders, proof. He wants it protected. Cop it. Spread if needed." The boy picked it up like it was made of glass. "I'll guard it," she nodded once. "Good. Then you're already one of us." As she turned to leave, the boy asked, "What's his name?" She smiled faintly. He stopped using it. Solid names are for the past. Missions are for the now. She walked off into the night, leaving only boot prints in the dust. The boy stood in the doorway, holding the drive, feeling the weight of legacy settle onto his shoulders. Then he closed the door and locked it. And waited up because some soldiers don't retire. Some become legends in the dark. And the house? It still breathed, still stood, still held the line. The safe house was buried beneath layers of farmland and silence. From the surface, it looked like a forgotten tool shed, rusted and lopsided. But underground, it pulsed like a war drum, quiet chatter, flickering monitors, maps stretched over walls scarred by time. Men moved with precision. Some limped. Some coughed. All carried ghosts. And in the center, seated beneath the humming lights, was the man who had vanished from the police station that night, alive, grizzled, and colder than winter steel. Clay sat hunched over a file. His hand shook slightly as he turned the page, but his eyes didn't blink. "They erased us," he muttered. "Every file, every medal. Like we never bled for this country." Across from him, Captain O'Reilly nodded. "We've been ghosts since the hearings. This is resurrection." Clay looked up, face drawn. "It's not about revenge. It's about remembering what we stood for. About reminding them who the hell we were." Above ground, the boy received the next knock. Another woman this time. Younger. Tense. "Time to move," she said, not asking. "We need the drive." He handed it over without hesitation. She clipped it to her belt, scanned the house one last time, then left without a word. The boy didn't ask where. He knew the fight was never meant to stay still. It moved, evolved, like fire following dry winds. At the bunker, Clay stood before a whiteboard crowded with names. Politicians, contractors, ex-commanders. "These are the ones who cashed in when we got cut loose," he said. "They buried operations, left men behind, paid for silence." He pointed to a circled name. "This one's still active. That's our in." The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that only came from men who had already died once and had no plans to do it again. A week later, they hit the first compound. It wasn't flashy. No explosions, no body count. Just shadows slipping past the lawns, servers wiped, a message left on the wall in red chalk. "We remember." It hit the headlines the next day. Unknown group targets government black sites. No suspects. No leads. Just a signature none of the talking heads could decipher. But for those who once wore the patch, it was clear. The brothers were back. Luis returned with Elias, older, hardened, but alive. They brought maps, intel, and a fresh list of names. "He's got eyes everywhere now," Elias said. "Every vet who was tossed aside, they're all tuning in, watching, waiting." Clay grinned. "Then it's time we gave them a reason to rise." They formed squads, trained silently under moonlight, and moved only when the wind was right. Every op was recorded, every lie exposed. The footage never aired on mainstream, but it spread like wildfire in the dark corners of the net. Then came the final name. A senator, decorated, praised. But behind the handshakes and speeches was a man who had signed off on the purge orders. Clay stared at his face on the screen, jaw locked. He smiled when he cut our funding. Smiled when they cuffed Hank. He turned to the room. "We go clean. No bullets. No deaths. Just truth. Live and raw." They infiltrated the broadcast station with precision. No one hurt. No systems damaged. But when the evening news rolled, it wasn't anchors who filled the screen. It was Clay, standing in uniform, medals visible, scars unapologetic. Behind him, a wall of names. The forgotten. The used. The buried. His voice didn't shake. "My name is Sergeant Clay Weston. 23 years in service, and I was thrown out like trash." He listed names, dates, locations, declassified files, orders. One by one, the lies burned under the weight of truth. For 6 minutes, the country watched in silence. Then the feed cut. The next day, arrest warrants were issued. But not for Clay. For them, the ones who signed, silenced, and sold the blood of better men. Clay vanished again. Some say he walked back into the mountains. Others think he joined a larger network. But the truth? No one knows. Only that the symbols keep appearing. Side of highways, corners of VA hospitals. We remember. The boy grew older. Joined the force. Quiet, disciplined. Always watching. He kept the old house clean, safe, a meeting point, a memory vault. Every now and then, a knock would come. A visitor, a message, a mission. And the boy, now a man, would carry it forward because the line never broke. It just moved underground, where warriors still breathe, still bleed, and still stand for each other.